Hey everybody, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse.
You're watching Disruptive Investing News, and let's jump right in.
So we got a bunch of Fisker things to talk about.
Yeah, so last Thursday, California-based Fisker Incorporated, so that's ticker symbol FSR on the New York Stock Exchange. That is the EV company founded in 2016 by Henrik Fisker. It held its Product Vision Day in Huntington Beach, California.
Also, Fisker just released their Q2 results, so let's dive in.
So first up is Fisker's Product Vision Day, where they showcase several new products, including the new Fisker Ronin, which is a convertible EV that looks like it wants to be the competition for the Tesla Roadster 2.0.
So this appears to be the Fisker Emotion, which was kind of put on the back burner when they started working on the Ocean SUV.
Yeah, I think what they did was they dusted that off, they updated it, they teased it last month, but now we're getting a really good look at it. So this electric GT supercar, Fisker says, is the world's first four-door electric convertible and will have 600 miles of range, they say.
I mean, technically it has 4 doors, but those are butterfly doors.
They're pretty cool, though. Yeah, but Fisker said it'll do 0 to 60 in about 2 seconds. He also mentioned that it'll have about 1,000 horsepower. So that's why I think this is going to be a Tesla Roadster competitor.
600 miles of range, though. I mean, how are they going to achieve that?
Well, Henrik Fisker said, quote, "There is already some integrated battery pack out there, and of course we know about those, but we have actually looked at something different. We are looking to integrate the cells into the structure of the body, and that will give us our goal of getting to 600 miles of range."
So he's talking about making the battery pack structural, just like Tesla's doing.
That's my guess, but some people have said that he's talking about going one step further and making the cells themselves structural. I'm not even sure what that means.
I don't know. Let us know what you think. Let us know in the comments below. When would the Ronin be coming out, by the way?
Fisker says towards the end of 2025.
I wouldn't really hold my breath.
No, that seems like not much time. But next up, Fisker showed off a prototype of the new Fisker Alaska, which is a small EV pickup truck with a base price of $45,000 coming again in 2025.
So I saw that Fisker just opened the reservations for it, $250 to pre-order. This looks like more of an adventure truck. It looks like a Rivian R1T competitor.
Yeah, in fact, I think it's actually smaller than the R1T.
So not a work truck like the Ford F-150 style.
Right, yeah. Fisker says it'll be the lightest electric pickup truck out there.
So no Section 179 Hummer tax deduction, huh? I mean, the Ford F-150 just qualifies at 6,015 pounds.
Well, maybe the Alaska will come in at 6,010 pounds, but we do know it'll only have a 4-foot 6-inch bed, but it's going to have a hidden midgate, which Fisker is calling a Houdini door. So with the tailgate down, it'll have 9 feet of flat space, a lot like the Silverado.
And you said that the starting price will be $45,000?
Yeah, so made in the U.S., possibly at the Lordstown factory alongside the Pair, which we'll talk about in a minute.
So this could mean the full $7,500 federal tax credit on the $45,000 car for a $37,500 starting price?
It could be.
But, you know, price is one thing. What about the range?
Fisker says between 230 and 340 miles of range. So probably they're talking about a couple battery sizes.
So can they really deliver on this in, what, 16 months from now?
Well, it would most likely come at the end of 2025, so more like 28 months from now. But Fisker did say it'll be built on the same FT31 platform as the Ocean. So maybe.
Although the fact that it's not going to be built by Magna Steyr in Austria, but rather by Foxconn in Lordstown, does make that seem a bit unlikely.
But yeah, let us know what you think and how you think this Alaska prototype looks. I mean, would you be interested in it for this price? And should we put down a deposit so that we get one of these to compare to like the Cybertruck?
Oh.
What? Ugh.
Another truck. We don't even know what charging standard this is on. Is it going to be NACS?
Well, we're going to get to that, actually.
Okay.
But that's not all. Fisker then revealed the upcoming $30,000 Pair, which is the small SUV that they've been talking about for quite some time. If this qualifies for the $7,500 tax credit, that could mean $22,400 after credits, which would make it the cheapest electric SUV I can think of.
But wouldn't they have to make them here in the U.S. to get the credit?
That is actually their plan. They want to make this at the old Lordstown plant again. My guess is that Foxconn would be the manufacturer, kind of like how Magna Steyr is manufacturing the Ocean in Austria.
But I mean, what can you expect to get for less than $30,000?
Well, we saw them show it off a little bit here. Fisker says it's being built on the SLV1 platform, which stands for Simple Light Volume. It'll have 35% fewer parts than the Ocean. So for instance, Fisker said that all 4 seats have the same armrest design. So instead of having to make 4 different parts, they only need to make 1. The Pair will be made out of steel instead of aluminum to get the price down. And their goal would be to make 1 million of them a year.
obviously that'll be way off in the future.
They're going to put the Houdini door on the Pair, though, as well, which is like the secret midgate feature so that you can put stuff from the rear hatch all the way into the car body. The Pair will be offered with 5 or 6 seat versions. Both will only have 2 rows of seats. And the way they're doing that is they have a bench seat in the front row of the 6-seat version. It's also going to have what they call a fruit.
What's a fruit?
I am Groot.
A fruit. I mean, well, it is a fruit. It's a pear. They even spell it that way.
Right.
So it's the fruit.
Yeah, it's the front boot. It's basically a frunk, but unlike a Tesla frunk, this will slide out.
What?
Yeah, like a drawer. He said it'll be insulated. Now,
that's cool, I guess. So you can put your groceries in it.
well, yeah, we didn't get to see it in action, which was a bit surprising.
I was scrolling through the video so many times. Like, I'm like, okay, where did they show? You said it had got this drawer. Where is it?
Well, and that's because they actually finished the prototype that morning. And it's only a prototype.
I see.
The interior is way more Spartan than what we had seen previously leaked, but that makes sense for this price point. The Pair will also have what they're calling lounge mode, which will allow you to reconfigure the seats. So including the front seats, you can take them out to create a flat space within the car for lounging around, and it would be, I guess, large enough to lay down in, so it would be a great car for camping. I don't know if, like, when you get to your campsite, if you take the seats out, I mean,
you just leave them.
do they get rained
next
on
to your car?
I don't know.
Bears come and rip up your seats, and you're like, oh, I have to drive home by like squatting and sticking my foot out and balancing. Like, what?
I don't know.
Cool.
Yeah.
Neat.
The Pair is also supposed to come out in 2025.
Oh, okay.
It's a big year for that.
Yeah.
And last but not least, they also showed the Fisker Ocean with the Force E off-road package. So Fisker says you can add this package even if you already bought your Ocean.
Which I think is smart from a margin perspective.
Right. And before we get to the Q2 results, though, you had mentioned NACS. Fisker said on the earnings call that they had an agreement drawn up with Tesla to use the NACS connector. They're just waiting for Tesla to sign it. I feel like what that means is Tesla hasn't seen this agreement yet, so I don't know if Tesla's going to sign it.
Okay, so Fisker will be the latest to join the NACS network then.
Right. Again, if Tesla agrees to the terms.
Which it kind of makes me wonder what the terms of these deals are.
I'm guessing that there's things in there like we get to use the Fisker app, and then Tesla might say no. Or there might be numbers in there like how many Fiskers can charge a year or something. I don't know. I mean, or maybe it's simple. Maybe it just says like, we'll use your connector.
I hope Tesla
says
makes
yes.
money. I hope it's like, they have to pay a licensing fee per car or per mile.
Well, again, we talked about this. I don't think that is going to be a licensing fee for the connector. I think the way Tesla's going to make money is I think they're going to be able to charge more for the electricity.
Okay.
Okay, so let's get to Fisker's Q2 results. Fisker had $825,000 in revenue in Q2, up from $198,000 in Q1. The first Ocean vehicles delivered had 7.5% gross margin, and excluding early-stage investor vehicles, the gross margin was 18.5%. Fisker said the Ocean 1 had an EPA range of 360 miles, which they said is the longest range of any new electric SUV in its class. Then there was an asterisk because, of course, the class involves price and all sorts of other things. Fisker raised $300 million from a convertible bond offering in July, which brings their cash up to $822 million. This is kind of important. All right, so Fisker produced 1,023 Ocean SUVs in Q2. They also lowered their production guidance down to 20 to 23,000 cars this year, down from 32 to 36,000 that they had guided for previously.
What's this due to?
Well, Fisker says it's due to suppliers having challenges delivering required components.
So my guess would be batteries.
That would be my guess. They also said that Magna Steyr was doing a planned summer shutdown to support the future volume ramp. Fisker is guiding for 8 to 12% gross margins for the full year. So I want to talk about that for a second. When we talk about Tesla margins, we're generally talking about not their gross margins, which are much higher. We're talking about including everything. When this is a startup company, you generally get to count their gross margins because they're still not done paying for stuff that they bought, right? All the R&D, factories. In their case, they didn't pay for factories. I think that their gross margins number is good in the sense that they are making some gross profit on the vehicles. But I just don't forget it's not net margins, it's gross margins.
So, I mean, just as an example, like a gross margin at a lemonade stand would be, what did we spend on the lemons, the sugar, and the water, and how much do we sell the lemonade for?
Right.
But you're not counting in the labor, how much the stand cost, and the land that the stand is on, and that kind of thing. So that's what net margins would do, and the lawyers that you have hired to run your lemonade stand.
Right. So that's how you get to, and that's why I think a lot of people get confused, right? They're like, great, so they must be making money. Well, they had a net loss of $85.5 million for the quarter. Fisker is guiding for $565 to $640 million in expenses for this year. So if you do the math, with revenue so far in the first half of this year at $800,000, they're going to be out of cash by late next year, unless, number one, they either start dramatically ramping up revenue, or two, they raise more money from more convertible bonds or issuing more stock, which would basically be dilution.
Okay. So this is pretty similar to Rivian and Lucid. I mean, and it's not surprising, right? I'm not comparing it to Rivian and Lucid because I want to like make them look bad.
No, they're all in a similar situation. They're all startup EV companies.
Right?
Right. So the balance sheet looks bad, but gross margins are positive in Fisker's case for now. And that is the smarts here of using experienced manufacturers to make your vehicle. If we look at Lucid, if we look at Rivian, they did not do that, right? They built their own factories, which meant a lot more capital costs, a lot of hiring engineers, figuring things out, whereas Fisker didn't have to do that. They basically designed the car, handed it off to Magna. Magna said, well, here's how we'll build it. So that was kind of smart in that sense. But we need to get our hands on the Ocean because I think that it's easy to say like, great, awesome, they're off to a great start. But we need to know if the car is really worth it, if it's a good electric car. I want to talk about the Mazda MX-30 here. As we talked about this week on one of our other shows, they only sold 55 of them so far this year, Mazda did. So they've decided to cancel the program. Why did they sell so few? Well, it only gets about 100 miles of range and it costs like $35,000. So most people are like, yeah, why would I even go near this car? Now, I'm not saying that. The Ocean has a stated range of much higher. So that's exciting. And it looks really cool. And there's a lot of cool features. So it could be a great car. But again, you need to drive it. When we drove the VW ID4, looks good, has a lot of good stats, but it didn't feel good. I'm not saying it's a bad car. No. It just didn't feel exciting. And I feel like you really have to knock it out of the park because you're competing with Tesla.
And they sell exclusively race cars.
Right.
And I think I harp on about this like a lot, that the suspension of the Model 3, like, and I own like an old Model 3. They probably have improved it more.
Yeah.
It's so low to the ground. And I know it's all electric vehicles and this kind of stuff, but like their double wishbone suspension made it so that way when I stepped into the ID4, which has like, I think McPherson suspension, it felt like crap.
Right.
I was able to spin the tires when I shouldn't have been able to.
Yep.
It was isn't it front wheel drive? And that felt like crap. So like there's a lot of things you have to get right in order for a car to feel good.
Yep.
And I won't know until I drive it.
Exactly. Because Henrik Fisker is a designer. He helped Tesla design some of their, the Model S, but designing a good looking car doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good driving car, especially when you have to keep the costs down. So yeah, we really need to get our hands on it. The Pair looks really exciting at that price point. The Alaska looks really promising. And so I think they're smart. They're keeping the brand strong by releasing the Ronin coming up. Like giving us this product lineup is really smart. It's kind of like what Tesla did, except they kind of dropped themselves in the Model Y almost. Like they're like, we're going to have a Roadster, but we don't have it yet. But here's our Model Y. And that's kind of an interesting way to do it. But look, Henrik Fisker is a showman. That can be good for a company. Having a good, strong CEO, showman, founder is like awesome, but you have to be able to back it up. It's a lot like some of the comments people make on Elon Musk with Tesla, right? It's like, well, he's not the greatest on stage, but he does know how to get people excited about stuff. It's just, can he deliver? And if you remember, with a lot of things that Elon's bad at is timing, right? He says, this is coming on this date, and then it doesn't come. Henrik has done kind of the same thing. He said this is coming at a certain date, and then it's not here.
To give both Henrik and Elon a bit of a break, all car manufacturers say it's coming,
That's true.
And then they don't deliver on the timelines. It's just that they're so good at manipulating news reports about it and putting out press releases where they can just kind of 1984 it and just be like, we have always been delivering our cars in the later half of 2025,
right?
And you're like, but didn't last year you said that you were going to come out with them this year? And they're just like, what are you talking about?
Right.
I don't know. I am impressed with Fisker mainly because my expectations were so low. Like they were just bottoming out. I didn't think that I would ever see the Ocean get produced at all. And a lot of that had to do with a lot of the EV startups that we saw that tried to do the manufacturing themselves.
Well, and he went bankrupt once before, and
Sure.
he kind of stupidly, in my opinion, kept the same name of his company. Like if you Google Fisker right now, it'll be hard for you to find the right Fisker, because you're going to find the company that went bankrupt in 2013. It was bought by a Chinese company.
You're right. No, it's super confusing to kind of suss out what is correct.
Right. I think he probably should have picked a different name just so that he wouldn't confuse everybody. The other thing is, by making the Ocean in Austria, you don't qualify for the federal tax credit here in the U.S.,
Yep.
and it is a California-based company. So, I mean, I know he's probably going to switch over and make the new vehicles in Lordstown, but that's another big question mark. Lordstown's never really made any EVs yet, and Foxconn hasn't made any EVs yet. In fact, you know, the Lordstown Endurance never really made it as a company. So there's a lot of big questions here. Whereas I have a little more faith in Magna Steyr. They have years of making Mercedes and stuff like that. Foxconn has not made an EV. So will it be a smooth ramp when he goes to make the Pair and the Alaska?
Right. I mean, there's a lot of different stumbling blocks that they could hit in terms of battery pack fires or just general manufacturing. Like, how fast can you ramp stuff up? Or once you've manufactured it, did you mess up bolt torques?
Right.
Like, there are so many points to mess this stuff up. And you have to trust a company like Magna Steyr. Well, I do, because they have experience in this. And so when they're sending their guys out onto the factory floor, they've already done this before.
Lastly, if you buy an Ocean here in the US, where are you going to get it serviced? I think that's a big question for a lot of people, is like, well, even if you buy it in Europe, you need to have a big service network. And I just know that from the early days of Rivian and from Tesla, you got to be sure that there's one nearby, because there's going to be little things that need to get fixed from time to time, or big things. And then if you get into a car accident and you need, parts for fixing the front end and stuff like that. In the early days of Tesla, many people complain that like it takes months to get a part just to do a simple bumper fix.
Or that the service center was hundreds of miles away, and if the car wasn't drivable, you had to get it towed hundreds of miles, which costs a lot of money.
Right. So these early buyers of any of these cars are, the early adopters, and they usually don't care about that kind of stuff because they're probably just buying it for the fun of it. When you get to the second and third level, those are people who want it to be their family car, and then they care about these things. So that's really the question is, what's Fisker going to be like when we get to that level? But this is the kind of stuff we talk about on our Now You Know Investor Club. So if you want to head over to Patreon, support the work we do for both our Now You Know Tesla Time news show that we do every week. We've done it for 361 weeks in a row. Or if you want to go over there and watch our Patreon bonus stories for $1 a week, we talk about this kind of stuff. The Investor Club has a Slack where we get really nitty gritty into all this stuff. And the best part I think about the Slack is you don't have to sit there convincing people that EVs are the next thing. We all get it, what disruptive investing is. And so we're already like light years ahead of most of the other investors out there. The reason we're talking about Fisker on disruptive investing is I want to know from you guys, is this a disruption? Is this another EV company that's actually, part of the EV revolution? Or are they just kind of too late themselves? I mean, they don't have their own factories. And so maybe it's just a lot of flash in the pan. What do you guys think?
Thank you so much for joining us today on Disruptive Investing News. We hope you enjoyed it. Please consider hitting the subscribe button. We'll see you next time on Disruptive Investing.